I was at Berkeley. I went for a summer, and then in '72 I went back. I quit. I didn't quit school, but I finished high school a year early in order that I could just.
Me too.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the best thing.
Yeah,
If you
and
find something that you really love, and then you can get out of there,
yeah, because
greatest feeling.
I wouldn't have made it that last year.
Hmm.
So I went to back to Berkeley for a semester, and then with Bill Lore, and we had a band that we traveled across the country from. We worked, I guess, a year and a half or a year, and in 1975 the band broke up, and we settled in L.A. He and his wife at the time, and then he moved back to Richmond, and I stayed in L.A. And I was really dead set on Carmen McRae. That's why I stayed in L.A. I didn't know anything about Los Angeles. I didn't know there was a recording industry out there. I didn't know anything. I just knew Carmen lived there. And while I was on the road with this cover band, we played hotel lounges for a month or 2 months at a time, and we lived there. That was my home. We would play. We go from state to state, playing a Holiday Inn or a Hilton, because they had lounges with live music at the time. And there's 5 people in one room.
Hmm.
That's how you lived. And while I was on the road, a friend of mine at Berkeley was gotten the gig with Chuck Mangione, who was a big deal
Yeah.
in 1974, 1975. And at Berkeley, everybody always made fun of me because I was more interested in the swinging aspect of playing rather than the straight eighth note fusion world. To me, that was not really very interesting because I grew up in that. That was of my time. It wasn't a mystery to me.
Yeah.
The other stuff was a mystery. But everybody trying to be hip at Berkeley or, peer hipness, everybody was only focused on Weather Report and Mahavishnu, and everybody was trying to play that way. And it wasn't interesting for me. So I got known for wanting to do, Joey, all Joey wants to do is play for Carmen McRae. They used to make fun of me. So this guy named Chip Jackson, wonderful bassist.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Yeah. We were really good friends, and he was on the road with Chuck Mangione, and he sent me a telegram when I was somewhere in Wyoming. He was in Los Angeles doing the Merv Griffin show, which was a very big talk show.
Yeah.
With Chuck Mangione, and he heard through the grapevine Carmen McRae was looking for a drummer. So there I am in some Holiday Inn, and I get this message, and I'm going, holy shit. And so I write a telegram, and I find out Carmen McRae's address and and I send her the telegram.
How did you find that out back then? How did you find an address out?
Oh man, if I'm good, that's one thing I can do. Besides playing music, if there's somebody you want to find, I can find them. I don't know how. I just don't give up. I can find them.
Okay,
Most of the time.
I'll keep that in mind.
I can find them. I think I called people, and I just looked up phone books, and
Yeah.
I called people who had a phone book because there was no internet, or it's only telephone. And telephones were expensive at that time, so I had to have it really together. And Chip may have given me a number of her manager or something. But I got her address and I sent it to her. And I never heard anything back. And so, okay, now the band that I'm with breaks up. And I'd sent her two telegrams saying, my name is Joey Barron, I play drums, and I would do anything to play with you, Never heard anything. So I moved to settle in Los Angeles after this band breaks up that I'm with, and I call everybody in town. I join the union, and I get an answering service because that's at the time they said you have to join the service if you want to get any work. So I put everything I had, which wasn't much, into that, and I had the union book, and I went down any people names that I knew or that I knew that worked with Carmen, I would call. So I met Frank Severino, I met Donald Bailey. Those two guys were really influential. And in the process, I met Hampton Hawes. I called him because he wrote this book, Raise Up Off Me. And I saw his name in the union book, so I just said, okay, I'm going to call him because I want to read that book, but I can't find it anywhere. So I called him.
Yeah.
And he answered the phone. I said, Mr. Hawes, my name's Joey Barron, and I'm new in LA, and I know you've written this book, and I'm wondering if you could tell me where I could buy it, because I'm really interested in, I love all the records that you play on, and I'm new in town. And then as I'm talking to him, I'm thinking like, go ahead, tell him you want to play. So I said, and I was real awkward, and I said, well, you know, I tell you what, Mr. Hawes, if you'd like to play sometime, man, I sure would like to play with you. I really loved it. And so he took my name and he told me a bookshop where I could go find the book. And a week later, I get a telephone call. And he said, is this Joey? And I said, yeah. He said, this is Ham. He said, you know where Pomona is? I said, no, but I'll find it. So he gave me the address, and I just ran out of my apartment, just ran out. My drums were in the car. I just went straight to his house. I spent all afternoon, evening, and night. I didn't get back to my apartment until like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock the next day. We played all night long.
Oh, great.
And
was there a bassist?
Yeah, he was a guy from Motown. I don't remember his name. He played electric bass. But we played all night. Really nice guy. I do not remember his name.
And also, I read a book by Hampton Hawes, but I'm not sure it was the same. Did he also write another one? Or?
I only know of this one called Raise Up Off of Me.
He talks about his time in the army and, you know, playing with Charlie Parker, and
yeah,
that's the book.
And his time in prison.
Yeah, and then JFK bails him out. Yeah, well, pardons him. Yeah. Then I know the book. Yeah, it's a great book.
And and he was a wonderful guy. And I ended up working. He called me several times to play with him at a place called Dante's and other clubs around LA. But anyhow, during that time, I was also substituting a lot. You know, word got out around town that, hey, there's this white dude that just came into town, and he wants to work with Carmen McRae. You know what I mean? In other words, to all the adults, that was just another job to them, was somebody, the boys club again. They didn't like a woman who was strong. They didn't like somebody telling them what to do. And plus, Carmen could be pretty rough. And there are reasons for that. But you know, sexism, what it is, that was the thing that got around town. Man, there's a guy here, and he wants to go through that shit. So my name got around town very fast.
Yeah.
And I was playing at this place called Tails Out in Hollywood with a wonderful pianist named Dave Mackay. And Frank De La Rosa was the bassist. And Frank had worked with all the singers. He knew them all: Ella, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen, Nancy Wilson, Irene Krall. He's a seasoned bass player, working through all those for all those people. And he knew how, all I would talk about was Carmen McRae. Man, like, how do you get to play with it? And he used to kid me all the time while we're playing at this club. He would just lean over and say, "Hey, man, she's here." And I would look around and he would just laugh at me. He would just laugh. And Dave was blind.
Oh,
So he
yeah.
couldn't see it, but I would see him smile because he knew Frank was fucking with me.
Yeah.
And he fucked with me all the time. And, but in a good way. It was, I wasn't pissed at him, but one night we're playing, I'm working there. I was subbing for Peter Donald, who was also very
Yeah.
helpful to me. And we're playing, I got my eyes closed, it's just upright bass, piano, drums, and really great scene, couches, people just relaxing, and listening. It was really fun. And Frank leans over and says, "Hey, man, she's here, just right, 10 o'clock, she's right there." And I knew, I said, "Okay, man, I just looked up, I said, "Man, fuck you." Like, he was on my right. I just leaned out, I was playing, I said, "Man, Frank, fuck you." And then as I went back to my pose, out of the corner of my eye, there she is, almost right at my elbow, sitting at a table, just looking at me, smiling. And then I look back at Frank, and he and Dave Mackay, who, he was hearing it.
Yeah.
They were just laughing their ass off while they're playing.
Wow.
And, of course, I met her and gave her my number.
Sure.
And I said, I was so nervous. I said, just to touch her hand was like amazing. And just, hear her voice and hear her speak, it was like, wow, it's just like the record. And so she says, "Well, okay, honey, I'll keep your number. Thank you, And a couple weeks later, I get a call, and she gives me her address. I think it was 2200 Summit Ridge Drive.
You still remember it?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. And it was in Bel Air, which is in a very exclusive part of Beverly Hills. And this, it's 1975. It wasn't that long after, the Sharon Tate murders in Beverly Hills with Charles Manson.
Oh, okay.
Charles Manson, brutally organized this team of people, and they went into Roman Polanski's house, and he was gone or something, and they just slaughtered people. Well, it was in, Beverly Hills, and Beverly Hills it's a very exclusive rich person's community. They have their own police force and everything. Okay, so that hadn't happened that long ago when I was called to come audition at Carmen's house, right? And I had a curly, like a Jufro,
yeah,
with beard.
Yeah.
And, I was like 19, and I had a van, a white Ford Econoline van. That's all I had. I paid cash for that, and I figured if things didn't go so well, I could live in the van.
Sure.
So I'm driving with my Thomas Brothers map. That was the map that everybody has in LA to find your way. And I was driving and pull over and look at the map. Okay, because Beverly Hills is really complicated, all these winding streets, and I don't know nothing. I've never been, it's not my kind of, I don't come from that background,
Yeah.
So I'm lost. Here I am. I got my drums, supposed to be there like at 11 or something, and let's just say 11, and I left plenty early, but I am way lost in Beverly Hills. I don't know where the fuck I am, and so I'm riding around streets and stopping and pulling over, and all of a sudden, when I finally get my way, I notice there's like 2 police cars following me. And as I'm getting right up to the top of the hill, she lived at the top of the hill, they turn on their lights. And I pull into a parking space, like it's almost like a little, I think it was a cul-de-sac or something, like a dead end. in front of her house, and I'm late. I'm seriously late, and this is my audition with Carmen McRae, right? And the lights are flashing from two cop cars. They kind of pull in back of my van. They surround me. The lights are flashing. I'm late. I open the back. I get out of the car. I look up at the house, which is a really nice house. I've never seen anything like it. And the door opens, and Carmen comes out, like in a little house dress, and she looks at me. She's smoking a cigarette. She looks at me, and she looks at the policeman, and she looks at her watch. Then she looks back at me, and then she just shakes her head, and shaking her head, and then she waves the police off. She doesn't even say anything. She just goes like that, and then turns around and walks into the house. Doesn't say shit to me, and kind of like closes the door.
She closes the door on you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and I said, okay, I better get my drums out right away. I'm thinking, man, she is pissed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm carrying all my drums stacked up. I didn't have cases. They were just stacked up. And I'm balancing them and trying to ring the doorbell. And then one of the guys, piano player, who was there, Marshall Otwell, I didn't know that they just auditioned the day before.
I see. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. So the door opens, and I walk in, and she yells, yeah, just down the stairs, few stairs, and I'm right there, So I set up the drums, and she's in the kitchen, and she said, yeah, just set up and yell when you're done. And nobody's saying anything. The piano player and bass player, they're not saying a word. It's like really cold. And I didn't realize this because they were scared too. So I set up my drums, and she comes in, and she pulls up right next to me. She sits right next to my hi-hat. And she says, okay, honey, take the book out there, and let's do Clear Day. Clear Day. Okay, I know her arrangement by heart, but I'll take the chart out and read it anyhow. So I take the chart out, and she counts it off, and we just play 2 bars. So dun, 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 and then she stop, and she's smoking, and she puts her head down like, elbows are on her knees. She's sitting down, and she's just like that. I was literally sweating buckets, and all I could see was the back of the piano player's back, because he was facing the other way. He didn't do anything. The bass player was just looking at the floor. Mm. And I'm thinking, oh, this is it. This is the end of my life here. And then when she looked up, and just a stone straight face, and she looked at me, paused. You got the gig, motherfucker. And then I just jumped and gave her a hug, and she hugged me. That was one of the best days of my life.
Yeah. I mean, you came well prepared, Yeah,
I mean, I knew, I didn't know anything really, but I just knew that, boy, I knew I wanted to learn how to do what she does.
Mm. What was your favorite record by her back then? The one that you always went back to?
She did a series of live records on Mainstream label, and they've all been repackaged. So there are various ones. There was one, I particularly liked the small group live records, the ones where she was with there's ones, it was repackaged in a CD form, and they called it Alive. Mm-hmm. Carmen McRae, and that had a couple of those Mainstream records that I used to listen to, but not for me. And, when I listen to them back, it's funny. A lot of times the bass player's out of tune, or maybe the chords that the piano player's playing is maybe not the greatest, but still, the feeling,
She had a feeling, yeah.
the group, the whole team,
Mm.
they had a feeling, and the way they just made music, man, it's still for me a template.
Yeah.
And they don't waste notes,
Hmm.
and they don't do something because they can.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She very seldom scats,
Hmm.
and when she does, it means something. And I say this all the time. She paints pictures with the words. When she says a word, the way I mean, this is in addition to the notes that she picks. I
Mm.
mean, she improvises. Her note choices are just they're great. They're
Mm.
in the moment. I don't think they're not something that so many people they learn something and it's an effect. They learn how to, it's like a trick.
Yeah.
Okay, when we get to the bridge, I'm going to do this,
Mm.
and okay, it works. And then the next time you hear them, they do the same thing, and then you realize it's not real. It's just fake.
True.
I mean, it works. It's a show, but she's real.
Yeah.
And everybody has things they rely on, but I don't know. She's the real deal as far as I'm concerned. I mean, she used to play piano for Billie Holiday
Hmm.
when Billie wanted to hear what songs when she was trying to pick out songs through a fake book. Carmen's she was a very good pianist.
Did she
And
ever play piano when you played with her?
oh yeah, every gig she would sit down and play a few tunes,
Mm.
and some alone and some with bass and drums. She was fun to play with. I mean, I learned a lot because her phrasing was so, I mean, it's just like her singing. It's her. I mean, she models what making music is all about to me.
Mm.
It's her. It's not about her. It's about the music, but she puts herself in the equation.
Mm.
And the biggest point is the music, not her. And the way she phrases and um, uh, I just wish that I could go play for her right now. Just because I feel like I feel like, okay, I don't really know anything, but I have a lot more experience and I think I could play a lot better
Hmm.
for her now.
Hmm.
But, I'm just so thankful to have had that experience, hang out with her and
Yeah.
do things with her on a personal level. And a lot of people have extremely nasty things to say about her, but um, we had kind of a great relationship. And I understand why people say nasty things, but uh, I was tested also. But I think it's just, you meet people in life, and sometimes they like to see how far they can go with you.
Mm.
And you have to navigate that however you can.
Mm.
And luckily, my test, I mean, you don't pass or fail. You just do something.
Yeah.
And we had an understanding that even after I worked for her, we would I would call her up all the time and we'd talk on the phone. And
So you stayed in touch with her until she died?
yeah, I wasn't in super close touch with her, but I would call her up and it was like as if we'd pick up right where we left off.
Yeah.
And toward the end, she was sick and she was depressed. All of her friends were gone, and
Mm.
she would say, I just want to be with Dizzy." Meaning she wanted to be in heaven with Dizzy. She wanted to go play with Dizzy.
Mm.
She really loved him.
Yeah.
I mean, in a collegial way, as colleague. You
Hmm.
know, anytime we were on the road together, man, it was just a blast. The two of them being around all his band and Carmen's band, we were all hanging out,
Mm.
and that was that was college. That was my PhD.
What did you learn from Dizzy? Because he's really a rhythmic guy. Also, I'm curious. Any lessons that you got from him?
Just as a performer, how much attention, how aware he is of everything that was going on around him, and how he paced himself. And I tell you, mainly Mickey Roker.
Mm.
And I would watch him play and watch how he would play a particular room. I learned a lot. He wouldn't try to fill up the room acoustically. He would
Yeah.
still play at a very balanced volume to
Mm-hmm.
blend with everyone else, and it still felt great. God, did he swing!
Yeah.
And he was hip. It wasn't. It was very hip. It was very kind of like ageless. Like the way Mel Lewis could play with people. And Mel comes from a generation, where they were still pounding four on the floor,
Mm.
thumping everywhere. Mel could play with like really modern type players and still sound very hip.
Yeah. It's true.
But yeah, that's what I learned, and yeah, just how much he loved just seeing the interaction between on stage when we play together. Dizzy would sit in with Carmen all the time. Man, it was just what a thrill! What a thrill to be. I mean, that's what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did a record, Carmen McRae, live at the Great American Music Hall.
I just listened to that one before we talked.
Oh, yeah. I've got tapes of that which have other thing. I have to digitize that. I think they're in my storage storage room. But yeah, Carmen said, "Here, I don't know what to do with these. Here, you take them." So I have them. But yeah, the record, I mean, was what they picked out for whatever reason. But I remember they put Clear Day on there. They put some tunes where he's playing with us. Every time I hear it, I remember every second of that.
Yeah. You guys sound like you have a lot of fun playing together. And
that audience, it was the audience. That town was her town. San Francisco was her town.
She sings a line and they react like you would see like in a gospel church or something. She just sings the word and they go like, what?
Yeah.
It's really energetic.
Oh, it was, to be part of that team, man. That was incredible privilege.
Yeah, great. Maybe we can talk a little bit about your relationship with Marc Johnson as a rhythm team.
Okay, Marc is. I mean, man, he's so special. He's really. I love Marc in every way. I mean, he's just fantastic. I mean, these days we don't play that much together. He's very focused on, his involvement with Ileani Elias. In addition to their non-musical relationship, they're very much involved in their musical pursuits. So he's not really available so much.
That's a shame because he was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, he was sort of more on the scene, and you could buy more records of him playing with you, for example. And I'm such a big fan of you guys playing together.
Thank you.
To me, you guys are one of the greatest, in the history.
Well, I don't know about that. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I mean, we stand on shoulders.
Sure. Shoulders. We all know that there are so many great rhythm teams, but you're part of that lineage, and you've added something new to the game together, I think.
Well, thank you.
And the two of you together, that's some of my favorite records with Abercrombie and with John Taylor,
Oh yeah. Well, actually, we did the last time we played together outside of because I've worked a lot with Ileani over the years and Marc in her projects, which is also a lot of fun. but they do a particular thing, and I'm not really. It's just I don't really have that in my schedule possibilities to do. But the last time we played outside of that context was at Abercrombie's Memorial.
I saw pictures of that
concert. Yeah, it was just at the last moment. I don't remember the name of the tune, but it was a tune that was on one of, I think, a Characters album that John did. And so the idea was I had set up a group to play, to represent part of John's history in his groups with Mark Feldman, the group we had with Thomas. Actually, Mark was part of that group first. Marc Johnson, Mark Feldman.
I saw you guys.
Yeah, but it was complicated how to fit everybody in. So Thomas Morgan played the bass in that group, and Marc Johnson was playing with other people, but it was configured such at one point Schofield, me, and Marc Johnson would play together.
Yeah.
Just this one tune. And I took a listen to the tune. Okay, I got it. And it was, the performance I heard of it was without a rhythm section. So I just figured it's just, we'll just swing out on it. And actually, I guess the other guys Mark had in his head, it's kind of like a straight eight floaty type of thing.
Yeah.
So the minute we hit, Mark saw where I was going. I wasn't trying to force anything. I just started playing that way, and Mark just kind of went like that and just jumped on it, and Schofield just jumped on that, and it was like everybody was listening so hard, and he was like looking up as if to say, "Thank you, John." Abercrombie, and I just broke up while I was playing. I couldn't, I was just, it was an incredible experience because we were just playing, it was swinging, it was funky, it was loud, it was really expressive, Schofield plays loud.
I know.
He plays really loud. And I can deal with that. I like to do that too. I don't like to always do it, but just the three of us, and we've played together at different configurations over the years. I knew John at Berkeley. I knew Marc Johnson from 1980 when I first moved. Well, actually, he was with Woody Herman's band. I think I had met him on the road when he was with Woody Herman's band and I was with Carmen. We might have met then, and then for sure we met in 1983 when I moved to New York. But he's very special. I mean, he's a funny guy. He's open. He's musically, he's like a sponge. If he knows the territory, he doesn't wear it on his sleeve. If he doesn't know the territory, he doesn't wear it on his sleeve. He's right there. He just melds into whatever's going on. I think that's probably why we get along so well. I have a similar approach. I tend to want to play with people right then and there, and I'm attracted to players who don't have an agenda other than let's make music together.
Yeah.
And let's listen. Let's do it by listening. Number one at the top of the list. And there's not a lot of people that when it gets down to it, that really operate that way.
Yeah.
Run their bands that way. So it's a small community, at least I found. And Mark is one of those people that, I've just always enjoyed playing with him. He's one of the great bassists of all times.
Yeah.
And I'm a bass freak. I really, because I grew up in a town where there was maybe one bass player who played Fender, and he played. It wasn't even technically it wasn't a Fender bass, but it was a really cheap electric bass, and he made sound like gold.
Yeah.
And that was it. And most of the times, when I would be working gigs, it'd be left-hand bass with piano players who played the walking line as if they were comping.
Right.
It's just horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So from the moment I left Richmond and went to Boston, and to this day, I am always, I am just obsessed with bass players.
Mm-hmm. What can you maybe, for the bass players who might watch this, what do you look for in a bassist?
Feel,
Mm.
sensitivity, strength, and do they know tunes?
Mm-hmm.
Can they play tunes, and are they playing the shit that's in the real book, or did they really put some thought into
right.
what they're playing, and are they listening to how the other person is playing, and is there an exchange on that level? Even though I'm not involved with the voicings or anything like that, I can hear them.
Yeah.
And I can tell when it's working and when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And sound, but all those things. I mean, if that's what I look for.
Yeah.
Time, the feel, and and if somebody's listening, well, then that leads to being able to blend and all the other offshoots of that. But those, and the sound, intonation. But there are a lot of guys that do play out of tune, but their beat is so strong that okay.
I'm wondering when Killer Joy is coming back.
No, I don't think. I'm not one to revisit things. I know, like everybody else wants to do that. I loved having that band.
I just wanted to say I love that band so much. I used to go see you guys whenever you played in Cologne. So many great memories, because when you were telling me these stories before about you were listening to music and maybe Ray Charles or James Brown or Jimmy Smith or whatever. When I listened to that story just now, I had to think of Killer Joey.
Well, yeah, that's what it was about.
It was
because
it was. How do you say it? All encompassing, or is that the word?
Yeah. I mean, that's why that was the main reason I wanted to do that band, because I couldn't do that. I wanted to do something I couldn't do with all the other people I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
When you work with other people, they do their thing, and I felt like, okay, I'm bringing what I have to their thing, but sometimes you just want to be flat out obvious.
Yeah.
And do something that, just like for me, I just wanted to do something that had a great feel, that didn't try to hide it, that didn't try to make it clever. It was just very simple. We just play the song and try and make music when people solo, and in a group way, by everybody listening. Because when you're leading from the drum set, it's kind of difficult. I depended a lot on what everybody else in the band did. I couldn't really control it, because then when you start telling everybody how to play, it kind of ruins the
spontaneity.
Yeah. There's so many people that do that, and I understand that. They hear their music a particular way, and I struggle with that as a band leader. I heard particular things, and I wanted, and I did say, listen, I really want this to happen, but let's just keep in this realm, but let's see how far we can go inside of it rather than outside of it or on top of it.
Do you know what I loved? There was one moment you guys played a quiet waltz,
Mm-hmm.
and you played it, and then you just announced that, you know what, I kind of want to stay in this zone. And
Uh-huh.
you went for the same mood again after that song. And I thought that was such a courageous act, that really impressed me, because that, in a way, that goes so against how I would have constructed my set, like two quiet,
Two ballads in a
two
row.
ballads in a row in the
Yeah.
same time signature, you know. But
Yeah.
when you just played it, that was all I was asking for. I want to stay here too. Please
Yeah.
play more of that. And you just said it, and I thought that was so. Yeah, you were really in the moment,
Thanks. Thank you.
and it was a great moment for me.
Thank you. Thanks. I learned early on, I mean, just nobody said anything, but it just struck me, when somebody would play the melody, just the melody of a song at a tempo so slow that you could barely keep your place in four. It was like, wow, all of a sudden all the funny stuff has gone away. Who are you? Or who is what is this? What do you have to say? And it's really, that's your moment. That's the space that you have to express something.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's the chance we all have to do something that can possibly be useful to someone else.
Mm.
It takes a lot of strength to do that, in every kind of way, not just physically. To play burning fast and loud and crash and burn and that whole thing. It's yeah. There's a technique, and there are people who do that great, and that's their specialty and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, well, I do know. Like if you're on any instrument, when you play a series of 16th notes and you're playing them fast, you don't have to think about how you're phrasing them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. There is no phrasing.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just the sheer fact of slowing a tempo down, all of a sudden what happens? There's space. And most people are so fucking afraid of space that they just can't stand. They gotta fill it up.
Yeah.
And usually fill it up with themselves or some bullshit that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
I think that's what's cool about, even at an up tempo, all the greatest players to me, even at the blazing tempos, they all left space.
Okay, I was at a workshop of yours when I was a teenager. I snuck into a workshop of yours in Amsterdam
Uh-huh.
at the conservatory. And a few
Okay.
things, when you're a teenager, like you already showed, some things really, really are ingrained in you in that little moments.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
talked about that one moment where I think you were playing with Jim Hall, and you kind of, at the end of a song, fermata at the end or whatever, the band was hitting a chord, and then there was a fade out,
Mm-hmm.
and you had the urge to throw your sticks on this on this drum kit, just
Oh
like.
yeah, that was from that record, These Rooms.
Yeah, I love that record. I love
Yeah.
that record, man. And that moment really stuck with me. Having the courage to do something that's really, in the normal sense, not expected from you,
Mm-hmm.
and but do it. And if you have that kind of environment where you can do something like this is priceless, right?
I guess.
But I was wondering how, maybe it's hard to explain, but how did you arrive at this moment to get that feeling that whatever I'm doing is okay? you know?
Well, I don't really know that. It's all, I mean, I never really know that. It's just all decisions that your mind is making on a, I can't even measure the split second, but do I hit this? Do I hit that? I don't think at all when I'm playing. If you did, you wouldn't be able to play. The
Sure,
music,
yeah. The
the
music is
minute
too fast.
the music, yeah, the minute you start thinking, it's over.
Yeah.
And so I don't, I can't. I mean, me doing that at that moment, it had something to do, I'm sure, with my relationship with the people I'm playing with and paying attention to that moment in the studio and the personalities involved, mine, Tom Harrell, Steve Laspina, and Jim, and having spent time together, and we're in a recording studio, we're all trying to be, turn the page real careful, all those things that are, you want to do the right thing. And then there's another part of me that's also, that when I see that, it's very hard to describe. I don't premeditate. It's just something like, it's like if somebody played a melody line that suggested a really nice voicing that wasn't apparent, but you heard it and you go for it.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Only it's not just about on the instrument. It's feelings and the atmosphere of of your friends and the people that you're sitting there in the room with, and if there's tension or how to break the tension. And we do that for each other, and that's all that moment was. It wasn't. I didn't calculate it, or it was. I heard the sound and I thought, oh.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful sound.
I mean, there's a line, though. I mean, I think one has to be very careful. There's a line that you cross at some point. That line it demarks where it's music and then where it is performance art. I'm not a performance artist. I'm a musician. So there are people that do things. It's definitely it's like it crosses that line. So for me, I can say, since I can only speak for myself, for me, I can say that I was really in the music and in that moment at that time, and I was thinking like, oh, we're making a document here that somebody's going to be listening to real, like, preciously listening.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that be kind of cool to break that myth?
Yeah.
Because nobody's that precious. Jim was not that precious. Tom's not, but everybody's so careful sometimes. And sometimes it's nice when somebody just lays something out on the table so that everybody can relax.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you play a blues and everybody is trying to disguise the fact that it's just a blues. And then when that person who has the nerve to just lay it out there and really mean it, wow, that's when the music just goes up. It lifts up. That's always been a big influence for me. And that again, from my very beginnings, I've always been attracted to people who did that. You play a ballad, play a ballad. You play a medium tempo, you play a medium tempo. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, particularly about ballad playing, I think all instruments, and particularly drums, though, it's insecurity, really. I mean, after the first chorus, people get nervous.
Yeah, they want to change it. Yeah, change it up. Yeah.
Or let's do some kind of metric modulation. I mean, yeah, that stuff is fun, and it's kind of cool if you can get through it and keep your place and all that. But I don't know. There's something about just really meaning it directly. just being as clear and as direct with your intent. That's what always really inspired me. It's not about the genre of music necessarily. It's about the real it's a personal thing. So some people have that focus. You know, like you ever see? I was watching the Charlie Parker clip yesterday. Him and Dizzy. It's the only recorded video clip where
Hot
he's
House.
actually playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what kind of state Charlie Parker was in when they were filming that? But one thing's for sure, he's like completely focused on the music.
Yeah.
Incredible. And I've always been attracted to that. You know, you don't have to look like him, you don't have to do what he did or anything like that. But however, it's an individual thing. Everybody does it their own way. So that moment on that record, that's I mean, I've done that many times, you know, at rehearsals or something when everybody's uptight and oh shit, we've got to get it right. And
yeah.
The band lead, but I'll count off the tune or something. It's like that old joke with a trumpet, a big band rehearsing, and the band leader counts 1, 2, 3, mutes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a takeoff on that, you know.
Yeah.
Dropping the sticks and having it rattle all through the drum.
Yeah.
Mel Lewis used to do that a lot, you know, because he was famous for not having any chops whatsoever. Mel Lewis had no chops whatsoever. But in terms of technical, you know, idiot drum type chops.
Mm-hmm.
But man, what he had music chops.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I remember at the Vanguard, or it would be his big feature drum solo, and he would on purpose, he'd try to go around the drums, and of course he would never get there. You just let a drumstick drop and you'd hear it rattle.
Yeah.
It was very funny. You know?
Yeah. It takes courage.
Yeah, it does. But I think that's part of it. You know, it's we are privileged to have the opportunity to present something the way that we think it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what artists do, and that's what, as a musician, we have that privilege, and it takes a lot of nerve, because you go from that stage of copying someone exactly and being able to acquire the technique and being, oh, I can do that. But then what's your story?
Yeah.
What are you going to say? And what are you talking about? You talking about some bullshit, or you talking about something that could be useful? Because if not, don't waste my time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I looking back, and those kind of artists are always the ones that have really stayed in my gut.